I had a question. Like when we
Yeah.
were talking about like shame, I just
hmm
kept on like thinking like what is the difference between like shame and guilt? Because for me, like I've never really thought about it as shame. I mean, now it makes a lot of sense. But then a lot of the times I have this like guilt of like, say for example, like when I'm like working through my emotions right now, I'm putting up a lot of boundaries and I'm kind of almost isolating myself from my family because they're so it's just like manipulation to a
hmm
degree and this like I just can't talk to them right now. I just
Right.
like all my anger comes out and I'm like I'm not gonna
Right.
yell at you because it's not gonna get me anywhere. So like
Right.
I feel guilty. I felt guilty for not picking up, but then it's like this like then I get this reminder of like, oh, you have to honor and respect your parents. And I don't know if it's like the shame that kicks in or the guilt that kicks in. And I'm just like, how do you know the difference between
I would say that the feelings feel close. Guilt is I did something wrong. Shame is I am wrong. Like there is something wrong with me. So shame usually comes after guilt. So it's like, okay, so if I hit somebody while I'm driving, I would be guilty of hitting them, right? Shame is I am a terrible person for, getting distracted for a second and running into this car. How could I, that's shame. So guilt though is we have to, especially in unhealthy family dynamics, we have to really unpack like a false guilt from a true guilt. Okay.
how
So
can you
yeah. So when we're talking about honor, like honoring our mother and our father, honoring those around us, we have to look at like what does true biblical honor actually look like? So, for example, I'm just going to use the example of honoring a toddler. Okay. Honoring a toddler does not look like giving them everything they want. It does not look like not making them take naps when they need one. It does not look like letting them throw screaming, raging fits. And I'm not talking about like neurodevelopmental stuff. I'm talking about like coming from the will. Like we don't just let them do whatever they want. So, in order to honor what God is building in them, I'm going to set healthy boundaries. I may let them scream in their room where they're safe and they can't hurt somebody else. I am going to honor them by feeding them food that's healthy because they don't know better yet. um, and I'm going to honor the growth and development that God has entrusted me with. Now, there are some adults that don't act that different from toddlers. Okay. So those are the adults I'm talking about. I'm not talking about super healthy adults. I'm talking about adults who don't know boundaries, that don't respect boundaries, that have no interest in reciprocation, that have no interest in building a healthy you in return, and are actually using manipulation to control you. That is a very different honor looks different in those kind of situations. It took me a long time to be able to distinguish the two. So, you honoring your father may actually look like not answering the phone because he's a bully. And the reason that I'm saying that is because when we look back, especially through the Old Testament, we see how God handles oppression, how he handles violence, how he handles manipulation, how he handles witchcraft. There are firm, do not pass go, do not collect $200 boundaries, right?
Mhm.
And so your number one job in this season is to honor God, to honor yourself, and to honor your family. And as you learn to honor, it's the leaving and cleaving, right? So you are not required. There is no place in the Bible that says you are required to tolerate abuse. In fact, like I would say that the majority of the Old Testament is God teaching his people how to flee oppressive systems, right? And so that's what you're doing. You're in that untangling part right now. And so that feeling of guilt, we have to look at, okay, did I do something wrong? No, I just didn't answer the phone because it was my birthday, because I am protecting my heart on an important day. That is different than like willfully ignoring somebody to punish them. That, like, I
Yeah.
would feel guilty for that, right? Like, I'm going to punish them because they did this to me
Yeah.
and blah, blah, blah. That's different.
Yeah. Also could just bring my upbringing, the religion aspect of like
Mhm.
your parents are your parents, you have to talk to them. For me, that's I think the hardest thing for me right now is I just feel like the worst child, that I'm like ignoring my parents, not talking to most of my family, not
Mhm.
talking to any of my cousins, because I realized how emotionally damaging all those relationships are.
Mhm.
But I just feel like I'm like the worst person because I'm like isolating everybody. And to be like, no, you're actually healing. And I just have this voice that just like drip, 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 drip. And I'm like,
Mhm.
just stop already.
Well, what I would say to that is, one, you got to give yourself some compassion for the emotional turmoil. Okay, so
Yeah, no
meaning like
compassion whatsoever.
this is really hard. This is really hard stuff. God did not wire us to have to leave our families in this way. This is why it's hard. And
Yeah.
this is why it's extremely like emotionally taxing, okay? So you got to honor yourself for that. Second of all, when I remember walking through this, and it would take me days, if not weeks, and sometimes months to like recover from those interactions because again,
Oh, yeah.
there's all this like enmeshment and entanglement and stuff. So I literally would ask my husband, did I do something wrong? Because I'm like, I don't know. My brain doesn't know the difference. Like, and this is
Yeah.
like a new grid here. I don't understand what's happening. So, did I do something wrong? And he would say, no, not number one. And he would just kind of walk me through this. Are you responsible for their emotions or their perceptions? No. Are you responsible for what they think about you or whatever belief system they decide to have about you, right? No. Did you communicate why you're not talking to them? Yes, I did. And for the most part, you don't have to explain it to everybody. I don't personally believe that you are required to explain all of that stuff to everybody. Leave people to
Um,
their own conclusions.
Question.
Yeah.
So if like for instance, I didn't tell my dad why I'm not talking to him
Mhm.
because for me, one, it's very hard. Two, I'm like scared to talk to him.
Sure.
And three, because I know he's just gonna dismiss me.
Mhm.
So in that aspect, did I do something wrong? Or is it I'm just not ready to, like I told my mom, which
Mhm.
I'm pretty sure she told him.
Yep.
I'm pretty he like yelled or gaslighting, blah blah blah. But I just like, is that something that I should communicate to him?
I
Even though
think
I'm like,
I think it's personally it's your decision, but I would but do it for your sake. And this is what like do it for you is what I mean. Because I know for me, I had the same exact like my mom's not going to respond to this well. She's going to call all the family and they're going to do their crazy flying monkey thing and then I'm just never going to hear the end of it, right? And so that prevented me from stepping in and say like actually saying no, I'm laying a firm boundary here and this is why and I will contact you when I'm ready, because I was afraid of her response when really this took a lot of time and work for me to do with my counselor, which was deciding to do it for myself. And what I mean by that is you're doing it so that you can have peace that you said what you needed to say, regardless of his response. So for me, that looked like a written letter. I couldn't do a phone call, but I could write a letter and it was very simple. And it was, Mom, I'm walking through some pretty significant inner healing from my childhood. I was not explicit. I did not lay things out line by line. I said, I'm getting the help that I need. And part of that help means that I cannot be in contact with you right now. I didn't say it was triggering. I didn't, like I have PTSD. I did not say any of that stuff. I just simply said, I love you and I will contact you when I'm ready. Bless you, wish you all the best, whatever. And it was very, like, very simple, but very, like, I have to honor myself. And I also feel like, for me personally, that I needed to honor her by telling her why. Now, did she understand it? No. And that's not on me. So that's what I mean by do it for you. It's because you can't control how he's going to respond to it, but do it from a place that that's what I needed to do to feel a sense of peace that I had done the right thing. The other thing that I want to say to this is nobody gets it all right when they're learning how to undo all of the boundaries. So you got to let go of the shame or the guilt that it has to be perfect, because I know it feels high stakes in the sense of like, if I don't get it right, somebody's going to punish me emotionally. I'm going to experience all of this backlash. Do you know what I'm saying? You're not going to get it all
Yeah.
right though. And that's okay because you're allowed to make mistakes
Okay.
because you're learning something new, right? This is not like
Yeah.
20 years in stuff. This is like the very beginning. And so that's what I had to learn to tell myself. I would legit have panic attacks after like ending a text conversation because I was so afraid that like, oh my gosh, I totally blew it. Like I didn't mean to say that, or I said too much, or I didn't say enough. And when really it was like, Andrea, for goodness sakes, like you're allowed. You're allowed to not get it right.
Yeah.
This is hard. And so for you, I would say you're allowed to not get it right. You're figuring this stuff out. The best that we can do is listen to the Holy Spirit, make corrections when that correction comes, and trust that God is not like your earthly father. Number one, to going back to that self-compassion piece is to say, you know what, this is really hard. I'm learning something new. And in a normal, healthy, thriving relationship, it wouldn't be this high stakes.
Yeah.
It's okay for me to make mistakes because I'm learning. And you're submitting yourself to the Holy Spirit. So don't go down the road of like, oh my gosh, no, we all make mistakes in the process. That's normal. And so I would say take some time to think about it. If you feel like I would feel better if I knew that he knew why I wasn't contacting him, you know what I mean, for your sake, then dialogue with the Lord about that and wait till your peace kind of lands in a certain place. Don't do it just because that's what worked for me. You know,
Yeah.
there are different, there are a lot of different dynamics, and there is no one right way to do it. But I would say, you know, if it leads you to feeling a sense of peace about yourself and your integrity, then I might do it. Um, but again, you know, pray about it and take some time. And you know, when those guilt thoughts come up, I know I've talked about this before, but I had notes in my phone and I would pull up my notes and I would read through those notes. It is not wrong for me to set boundaries. It is not wrong for me to communicate my needs. It is not wrong for me to protect my time. It is not wrong. Like I literally, I wish I could find it. It's like on my old phone somewhere, but I'm like, man, I was committed to
Yeah.
retraining my brain. And it's okay to need that. There are going to be some days where you need that reassurance.